Hey guys, so I was asked to do more videos about my experience with recovering from POTS, and one of the most fundamental things I find out in the people I consult with is that the presence of mold is something they think is actually not life-threatening. It's not something that could trouble them much, and they totally and completely miss this step. So to make it very clear for you, my experience, I'm not a doctor, I can't give you any medical advice, but I can explain to you what I, had gone through and basically my story. The first time it was suggested to me that I could have mold issue, I actually laughed. Okay, so there was a Facebook feed, there was a woman who suggested that I might have a problem with mold, and I did look around. I thought it's a clean room, there's no mold in this house. So basically just completely brushed it off. And I was so terribly wrong. At that time, I was living in a house that had horrendous mold issue, but it was not actually in the form of something black on the wall. It was inside the air. The spores of the air were mold was coming through the air from the it's kind of like a basement, was damp, and it was traveling up to the third floor attic where I was living, and also it wasn't just a basement, it was also the walls of the house had on the outside mold as well. Just the age of the house, it was about 80 to 100-year-old house, and in that time I can guarantee you it would have had some water damage. So how can I convince you that basically you should take something seriously that you can't even see with your own eye? This is the biggest problem I'm having explaining to you, and it is honestly the worst. So how can I scare you enough to get you to look at it? I can relate to you a story I saw on TV. It was about a woman who had lost her baby. The baby died very young, and the people were trying to work out what happened to this baby. This baby was alive, and in the morning it had, the lungs, something was wrong with the lungs, and the baby passed away very sadly. And so what happened is investigators came into the house, and they went to the basement of the house, and I saw the picture of the house, and the house was basically very water damaged. It had like up to your knee or even further up. I don't remember exactly how much water it had, but it had a lot of water in the basement. And the spores is basically, this is inside here, there's spores. Can you see mold in there? Like, can you see mold in there? No. Well, there's no mold in here because it's a new car. But I'm just saying, if I was in a moldy house and if there was mold spores in it, it would actually literally be like looking at that. Can you see mold in there? No. That's how bad it is. You can't actually see it. Sometimes you get a musky smell. Sometimes you get, some mold on the outside of the house. Sometimes you can just, get dizzy. Like for me, I was so sensitive to mold that when I moved into another house, my first idea that there was something wrong with the house is I got dizzy very suddenly. Like I just walked into the room and it just hit me, like I went like, it just hit my head, like was this, I started to spin, not like physically, but, mentally. It's like something just made me, become dizzy. And eventually I found out that there was water damage from the side of the house, and the water was seeping in my bedroom, and I ended up having black mold all over that house. It was horrendous. And I'm actually quite surprised I survived, and I'm surprised I didn't die in that house. It's just like for some reason I just keep living and like through these horrible experiences. But it is honestly life-threatening for some people. It is, and so you should take it seriously. Now, here is the most important part. Why would you or I have a problem with mold where another person in our house is completely okay? And there's an answer to that. And an answer to that is in your genetics. Genetics have a set of code. So when, my eyes are a certain color because genetics told me to have a certain color, they give instructions into how your body does things. So with the genetics that I personally have, I'm a susceptible patient, meaning that I would get mold illness more susceptible than any other person, because my body just doesn't have the capacity to clear out the mold from my body like another person would. So for example, there are some children out there who you give them a peanut and you can physically harm them by giving them one little peanut, because they would have rashes and some might have anaphylactic shock, because their system completely is against the peanut, and our system as mold patients is completely against the mold. And for other people, they can have mold for breakfast, lunch and dinner. It has nothing, doesn't do anything to them. So I hope having an analogy of comparing ourselves to people who have peanut allergy, but are not reactive to peanuts, we are reacting to basically mold. This might help you understand what the problem is. So, and you might be sitting there going, okay, I will accept that I might have a problem with genetics. I might accept that I might have a problem with the mold, but how can you prove to me whether I do and whether I don't? So currently, currently there is actually science that can tell you what is going on mold-wise in your body. There's a blood test. There's, I think, about 3, 4, 5 different blood tests you can do. They're all listed on the website that's called Surviving Mold. Excuse me, I just caught a cough somewhere. Just recovering through that. So the website Surviving Mold lists all the blood tests you can do, but the most important one that I really like personally, I'm not suggesting you do it, but I'm just saying I personally liked having it, is indisputable. In my case, I had a brain scan, and a brain scan shows which part of your brain are affected by mold through, they do a normal MRI, and then they put it through they do something else to it that takes another 10 minutes. And they send it through special software, and they send it to America, and report it as called neuroquant, meaning it shows you where the shrinkage is. And it's used for Alzheimer's patients. It's used to detect early onset for Alzheimer's patients, but somehow they made it also work for mold. Now, how do they do that? Honestly, guys, I don't know, but I did do this scan, and it did show that I have, mold affected brain, which is, indisputable if you ask me. Okay, some people are saying, it's all like in your head. I'm thinking, yeah, it is all in my head. But just so you know, it is a treatable condition, and don't get too frightened if something shows up on an MRI. I mean, I'm not telling you to not get frightened, but I know of, you can reverse changes even in an MRI, even in the brain. So you need to understand it's something that if you do correct diet, if you take your correct prescribed medication and work with your physician, you can achieve, you can work on your goals and get to where you want to, be. Personally, I have achieved my goal. I'm walking again, I'm running, I go to the gym. I'm actually in front of my gym at the moment. I'm about to go and have a session. These are things I used to dream about because I was completely bedbound for like a year and a half. So, and what made it worse, and and I know that you're sitting there going, I still can't believe it, and how am I going to prove this, and where am I going to go, and what tests I'm going to go and have. Honestly, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I believe you that you can do it. You just need to make it work. You need to find out if your genetics are susceptible to mold or not. And also, if you think about it very, how can I say it, very analytically, what you will do is get a blood test, and you will get a number or a code assigned to your blood test of what your result is. And you take this code and you look it up on Dr. Shoemaker's protocol, and it will show you if you're a very susceptible person, if you're a susceptible person to Lyme disease, and it will give you a very straight answer. It's a very small table. It's only about this big. It's located on the website. It's been there for a long time. It's very reliable for me, in my personal viewpoint, very reliable source. And so there's no issue in getting your answer. And when you get an answer, then you need another answer. And the other answer is, can you actually live in your house if you okay, so there's only one way to say it. If your house has too much mold, you need to move. Okay, so that's a big problem. So if you're mold susceptible and your house index score is 26, like it was in my case, I couldn't stay in that house. It was completely not possible to reverse the damage in that house. But if your score for your house of the mold is like around 10, or it's not very high, then your doctor would allow it. But my doctor told me that if your score gets over 10, you can't live in that house. You would need to move to another house. And I know that we get very attached to homes, and I know that we don't want to move, but you need to understand that you really need to follow the doctor's directions. And for me, I'm not telling you to, like, you do whatever you want, but I'm just saying, for me, I had to follow the doctor's directions. She said to me, if it's over 10, like, no. She even said if it's 10, like, no. But my house now I feel like fine at, but if it gets to like a very undesirable number and I can't do anything about it, then I would, of course, would have to move. And this is such a massive problem because in a span of 3.5 years, I personally moved 4 times. That's a lot of stress moving. So I think 4 or 5 times. I just kept moving and moving and moving. I thought, well, this house is not good. I feel sick in a house, and another house, and another house, and another house. And sometimes the problems are not very readily seen straight away. You don't really see the problem. Like, I moved into a house that was completely new. On the inside, it was completely ripped out. Everything was new, placed in there. But the leak was coming, slowly seeping through the carpet. So in like a few months' time, I had the problem with this so-called looking, perfect house. So I would just tell you, if I could talk to myself back like 8 years ago, I would tell myself, get out of that house, as in run, and don't come back ever. And any house that's got a massive problem with mold that you can't fix, there's no point of staying there, because it's just like poisoning yourself with toxic air that affects the central nervous system. For me, that's not rational. You see, for me, it's rational to live in a safe home, feeling fantastic, feeling good, having friends over, cooking nice dinners, working, going to school, going to church. That's like a normal life. Living in a house that's killing you is not like a normal life. That's like a life I wouldn't wish on a dog, So I honestly wish you guys the best. I hope you find out your answer if you are susceptible or mold or not. But I have seen it so many times that I really want to stress and address it, that it probably would be my number one priority. If I could talk to myself and give myself advice, I would say definitely don't ignore the mold possibility of having a negative effect. So that's all for me today, and I hope you have a very nice night. And if you need me, you can PM me, you can leave a comment, and I'll reply to them. And thank you so much for watching my channel.